Hello, hello, ovaries in the audience, and the men who love them. So how many of you have a really big mission in your life?
Yeah.
Not everyone in this room? You should leave. Anyone else? And how do you feel on a day-to-day basis in terms of, rocking your mission and getting things done? Are you feeling like you're kicking ass and taking names every single day? And do you notice that there are some days where you're just not feeling as optimized to go and crush it, as it were? And do you sometimes beat yourself up about, wow, I'm just really not at my A game? And you notice there are patterns about that, and you maybe even think, gee, if I could feel, just the same each and every day, maybe I could start that business or write that book or have the relationship that I want or make the money that I want, right? Well, you're not crazy to think that way. What if I told you there was a code inside of you that would help you with less effort and more ease accomplish anything that you wanted? You would want to get that code, yeah?
Yes.
Who does? Yes? Okay. So I'm a science nerd. In fact, if there was an entry music, it would be She Blinded Me with Science. And one of the things that I've studied is, just what is the most powerful force that we have in nature? In the natural world, there is only one force that I've identified that is the most powerful, and it's this idea of the cycle. Right? So just think about cycles in nature, right? We have the cyclicality of seasons. We have the way that things are birthed, grow, decay, and die, right? That's a whole creation cycle. We have, the cycles of the moon and the ocean. We have all of these different cycles, and they're so powerful. They affect every aspect of our lives. And yet, when it comes to our own bodies, we kind of stay really disconnected from these internal cycles that we're working with. And don't worry, men, although I'm going to talk a lot about the ladies right now, you have cycles too, and they affect your reality as well. And for me, I had no idea that we women were literally encoded with a biochemical cycle that created powerful change. In fact, it's a natural form of biotech. And it's another, you might call it your period, but I call it, the change agency that's inside of you, okay? And, people call me a lot of things. They call me the protector of the period, the high priestess of fertility, the ovary whisperer. It's all good, as long as we get the job done. And, for me, I'm very interested in turning women on to this concept, to reconnect them to this idea that they are having this biochemical cyclicality that allows them to be a change agent in their lives. Right? If you are actually trying to get things done, you should be leaning into your body and working through your body to make things happen. So of course, I was never looking for my period or my ovaries or anything to be the holy grail of my life. But be that as it may, I was really surprised to find that although culturally, right, we joke so much about PMS, right? Oh, I wear my fat pants half of the month, or I'm a different person half of the month. And we have a tolerance, that in fact we should suffer, right? How many of you believe that being a woman comes with a little degree of not feeling good? Yeah. And men, you sort of expect women to be a little bit fluctuating, right? And, I never took these things seriously, of course, until it was a big problem for me. So I want you to picture me as I was 15 years ago. And I was 20 years old, and I found myself in the midst of a hormonal collapse. So what does that mean? So I was, 5'6". Before this all happened, I was about 145. In the period of about 3 or 4 months, my weight ballooned up to about 210. It was really interesting. Had no explanation as to what was going on. And my skin, which I know is absolutely luminous, I can't even express to you, riddled, covered, face, chest, and back in cystic acne, painful cystic acne. I was having dinner with my college roommate a couple weeks ago, and she had gotten a copy of the book, which you'll all get tonight. And she was reading this part about how I would I called it spackling. I would spackle my face for about a half an hour in the morning just to be able to go outside and face the world without feeling shame and humiliation about my skin. And she's like, I remember that. You know, that's like no joke. And it would really drive her nuts because we'd always be late to class. But, you know, we had to do what we had to do. I was menstruating once or twice a year, if that. And I was exhausted, depressed, and I had this excruciating sense of isolation and frustration. You know, no one knew what was wrong with me. This had been getting progressively worse for about 6 years, and there was no diagnosis. I was being a good patient. I was going to the doctor. What's going on? We don't know. Maybe you should be on the pill. You know, you're young. It'll hopefully regulate itself out. And in one of those insomniacal nights, I found myself, I was a student at Johns Hopkins, on my way to becoming an OBGYN. I had this passion for women, I guess, from a young age. And I was just trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with me. So I was reading some obstetrics journals, and I found a little article on a disorder called Stein-Leventhal disease, which was the original name given for the condition that I figured out that I had, which was polycystic ovarian syndrome. Anybody know women with PCOS? 1 out of 7 women have this condition, and the average undiagnosis phase is about 5 years. Okay. So I'm reading this article, and all the bells are ringing. I have all the classic symptoms for this condition: the obesity, the acne, the lack of periods, the insomnia, the exhaustion, the depression. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been going to the doctor for 6 years, basically since my first period, and nothing, no one, nothing. No hope, no prognosis, no diagnosis, no nothing. So, of course, I was extremely excited that I figured something out to help me potentially. I ripped this article out of the journal, "Do not destroy library property." I just was really excited. And I waited/stalked my gynecologist the next morning in the parking lot at her office. And I said, "Hi, good morning." And she was a little startled. And I said, "You know, I think I figured out what's wrong with me. And I need you and I to do a transvaginal ultrasound stat." And she was thinking to herself, who is this nutcase, you know, coming here asking for something so specific? But there I was. And we did the test, and absolutely, as predicted, there on my ovaries were these little string of pearls, as they refer to them, although it didn't feel like jewelry at the time, little follicular cysts that weren't quite developed properly and were causing all sorts of malfunction in my entire endocrine system. So we went back to her office, and being the practical New Englander, I'm saying, now what? What do we do? And she said, well, and this all happened kind of in one breath. She said, of course, you're obese now, and that will continue to be a problem for you. Increased likelihood that you'll develop diabetes. Certainly, infertility will be a problem, and you know, we'll have to worry about heart disease and cancer. But not to worry, we can medicate you along the way. Now, I know so many of you have been in situations in your life, maybe in your health, where you've been faced with a prognosis that seemed a little bit dire. And maybe you even had a recognition in your body that, though it sounds really, really bad, that perhaps that's not your future. And in that moment, in that chair, you know, the world slowed down. I meditate, and I have these experiences now, but this was like a spontaneous, timeless, dropping out of time moment. And every cell in my body just started saying, chanting to me, no, that's not your future. That's not your future. And you know, here I am with my doctor, who's far more educated about these things than I am, and I was 20 years old, and I am telling her that I don't want to take the treatment that she's prescribing. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to get better, but I know that I'm going to. And she kind of said, well, you know, go ahead, do your research and experiments, and come back when you're ready to go on the medication. And I've since been in touch with this GYN, and we are fast friends. She thinks it's really fantastic, what we've created here. So anyway, I then embarked on this journey of trying to figure out how to heal. And at the time at Hopkins, I was privy to some cutting-edge research that was coming out of the Human Genome Project, which was this really cool thing called epigenetics. And not to get too nerdy on you, it's this little ghost protein that wraps around your genes, your DNA, and based on a few factors, either constricts or expands to help your body express health or disease. And they studied identical twins to figure out, well, what causes this ghost protein to either contract or expand? And they found that there was only 2 things that made that happen. And it was food and lifestyle only. So I thought to myself, I'm a big fan of fractal geometry. Again, super nerdy. What's true in the micro is certainly true in the macro. And if we can manipulate gene expression with food and lifestyle, we can certainly apply that to larger systems in the body. So that's when I sort of put it all together: endocrinology, chronobiology, reproductive endocrinology, nutritional genomics. And I created this protocol that over the course of trial and error over a 2-year period, finally honed down to the right formula and watched my body transform. 60 pounds melted off. My skin, as I mentioned, is fabulous. And I'm really happy to report that I've been, and I know not many people get up on stage and say this, but I am really happy to report that I've been ovulating and menstruating for 12 years every month. So fantastic. And I remember feeling so alone in this process. And I realized very quickly that I wasn't alone. In fact, there is an epidemic of women's reproductive health issues in our present culture. In fact, 2 generations ago, the biggest issue facing women was trying not to get pregnant. Now, women are having infertility rates beyond anything that we've seen before in human history. We have women suffering from, over 40 million women struggle with menstrual disturbances like PCOS, fibroids, PMDD, endometriosis, irregular cycles, infertility, postpartum depression, missing libido at younger and younger ages. And so I thought, there has got to be something that I can do. So I started really simply. I opened a clinical practice in Manhattan 10 years ago. And I just started treating women with these 3 categories of conditions and saw great results and was really happy that I was helping those women who I could touch personally. But then, I got the entrepreneurial bug, I guess, and I had a crazy idea about using technology to bring a modern solution to an age-old problem for women. So I had a back-of-the-envelope kind of plan organized, and I sat down with the former chairman of Jenny Craig, and I said, here's my crazy idea. I think this multi-billion-dollar industry of reproductive issues, right? Assisted reproductive technology, all the money women spend on oral contraceptives and Midol and you name it. We actually need a natural solution, but in a way that's easy for us to access. So I'm going to build like the world's first Rosetta Stone for women's ovaries. So at the end of 2011, I raised some angel funding, and I did just that. We launched in March of 2012, and we have been taking care of women in 6 continents, thousands of women in 6 continents ever since. And it's really exciting to be able to bring them a solution. Now, I know I'm running out of time, but I do want to just share a little bit of this technology of change so that you can start to apply it in your own life. And men, pay attention, because you can, understanding your own cycle and learning how to interface with women's cycles will make you more successful in your dealings with women, regardless of your sexual preference and who you're with. Okay, so you have these 4 phases of your cycle. Follicular, the beginning, ovulatory, which most women know about, luteal, which we refer to as the PMS week, and the actual menses. And in each of these 4 phases, you have 4 distinct hormonal ratios of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, serotonin. It's amazing what goes on. And if you could learn how to leverage and lean into what's naturally occurring, this cycle of creating change that's happening in your body anyway, then you would be able to get more done. And I want to show you a couple examples of that. So for example, how many of you notice that you go to the gym 1 week out of the month and you kill your boot camp class? You just crush it. You go in there and you kick everybody else's ass in your mind. And then the next week you go and you are literally dragging your own ass out of class. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I couldn't possibly have gotten out of shape in 3 days. But what happened? What's the difference? And if it makes sense that we would cross-train our exercise, right? Any personal trainer will tell you want to do muscle confusion and all of that. Or we'd want to cross-train our exercise with our hormonal patterns to be more effective at the gym. This applies to your sex life too. Let's talk about sex for 30 seconds. Not even, 10. Okay, so I tend to talk too much. Okay, my husband, I always joke, could teach this class, but here's the thing. Instead of a chore wheel, he just knows where I am in my cycle, because it sets him up to win in our relationship, not only in bed, but also in how we interact as a couple. right? So he knows how to plan dates, activities, what kind of sex we're going to have based on where I am in my cycle. And he always feels empowered that he's going to please me in every possible way, which is any man's desire if they're with a woman that they love. In career, there are actual neurochemical shifts that make you a better negotiator at certain times of the month and more successful at analyzing data, et cetera. You can, as we do at Flow Living, plan your whole business around this hormonal pattern. So I brought a whole bunch of books. I want you guys to take them home and see a little bit more about this protocol and how you can start to become a change agent in your own life. And I hope that I've inspired you to just connect with your body in a new way and think about how your body is not this fluctuating liability, but rather it's containing this natural biotechnology that makes you a powerful change agent. So, love your ovaries, change the world. I will take questions about ovaries, sex, business, fundraising, anything you want. Hello.
Yes, thank you for your talk. How does biorhythms tie into all this?
So are you talking about chronobiology, circadian rhythms? What are you specifically referencing?
With the 3 or 4 biorhythms, you've got a mental, you've got an emotional, you've got a physical, and they're all, at times people use them to plan betting on football games and things of that sort.
Interesting. I haven't looked at the connection between those. I'm more focused on the actual hormonal patterns and how we can leverage them. So instead of something that feels more intangible, I like to ground what I'm planning in a very practical way. So I think there's probably room to play with the emotional states, but I think for women, we need to feel like we can rely on something that feels really tangible in our bodies, because for so long we've kind of felt like this is a big mysterious process. And instead of making it more esoteric and intangible, it's part of the woman code system that I've developed to make it really practical and user-friendly. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, Charlie.
What cycles do men have?
What cycles do men have? So men have anybody just noticed that men go through something that I call man MS? Right? Like it happens every 7 days or so. So men have a cycle where they get a little bit sort of funky once a week. And then every day they go through a cycle, a testosterone production cycle, and a cortisol interacting with testosterone cycle. So they produce testosterone while they're sleeping. They wake up with a high dose of testosterone, which is why they typically like to have sex first thing in the morning. But if you're looking to have when is the best time to have sex with a woman, and when is that optimal for both parties, it would be actually noon time. I know, afternoon delight, but a little earlier, lunchtime delight. Yeah.
There's a question in the back.
I can't see, but ask it. Yes. I love is this all men asking me questions? 3 men? I just got up here talking about lady parts. I have only men asking me questions. Okay, great. Go ahead.
Does your book cover anything on postmenopausal?
Actually, it talks a lot about how do we reclaim sexuality and sex drive throughout the reproductive life cycle, which includes perimenopause and postmenopause. So if there's somebody you're thinking of, then make sure we get her a copy of the book. Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'll be here signing books. Come get one.